Well, thank you, Mosam, and thank you, Anup. Thanks, Parag, for the invite. And I hope it's not too much of a repeat for some others who might have heard part of this talk, but it never hurts to say the same thing a few different times. I mean, my dad used to tell me that if you chant a mantra enough times, you start believing. So hopefully, I keep chanting the ANRF mantra, and you guys will start believing what we are up to. Okay. So anyway, first thanks, and this talk is a little bit of two parts. One is for how many of you know about ANRF? Okay. Next question: how many of you follow our LinkedIn or Twitter pages? Okay, so whoever is not following, a gentle reminder, you can follow us. Hopefully we'll make it interesting. It's not just some stupid notice board where we are putting up, here's our programs and so on. That's important for faculty, but for students and we are also making it a platform for individual researchers. We are putting out webinars. We are doing curated things also with IIT Delhi and others, called an ANRF plus IIT Delhi program. We are putting out things. Then also we are using AI. We have a project called Saral AI to take papers and convert them into YouTube and other things like Instagram Reels and things of that nature, as well as podcasts and so on. So that we want to democratize research. So hopefully you'll find it more than a notice board. Okay, so please follow us. So ANRF is a new statutory body of Government of India, as was announced. What it means by a statutory body, for those who may have forgotten you of civics, is that it is created by Act of Parliament. It also means that it's a long-lived body. It is independent of any line ministry. So when say Nandan went to create Aadhaar for India, a new statutory body called UIDAI was created. Unique identity and so on. So similarly, ANRF is a statutory body of Government of India, which means it's a legal entity. It's almost like a trust, and it has a continuity. To get rid of a statutory body, you need 75% of the parliament to vote against it, and so on, right? So which means it's a long-lived institution, and it also has more long-lived funding, budget allocations and things like that. What it means is that it gives you an institutional framework and a stable way to drive funding and transform funding, rather than a more fragmented or start-stop approach to funding, or as the dispensation or ministerial or other bureaucratic changes happen, things might happen in a line ministry. And so this is that institution reform is the most important part. And I will talk a bit more about that. And also the second part of my talk, I'll talk about AI for science and engineering. It's also a case study in how we design programs, and how interesting new programs in AI or other things will be done, right? So since I happen to come from an applied AI background, I don't call myself a core AI guy, right? But we are, in my prior jobs, I've spent time in applying AI. So we got around and saying that, okay, this is one bus. People keep talking about buses that India is missing, right? So if this is one bus we don't want to miss. So therefore, before you guys set up this workshop, I already launched a program. Okay, so we are not missing this bus, and we are going to be putting out more programs. And I was just telling Mausam about some of them. And you have the opportunity to tell me where to put my money as well. Okay, so without further ado, this is like a one-slide summary of ANRF. ANRF is a funding body, but it's also a catalyst for the rise of India as a research and innovation powerhouse. Okay, so look, we have 1.4 billion brains. Okay, our biggest power is our brain power. Okay, and we'll be largest population, so we should look at our potential as the largest brain power, and that is going to be the pillar of Viksit Bharat. Okay, yes, we build roads, we build digital infrastructure. Ultimately, our brain power is the largest. Human capital, human infrastructure is the largest. Okay, how do we amplify that? How can we serve the world with it? How can we serve ourselves with it, right? So that's the thesis. And then as part of the human capital, human infrastructure story, ANRF stands has been established as a pillar for Viksit Bharat, right? So that's the nature and the long-lived thinking of this institution, just like National Science Foundation, DARPA, and other institutions have been there. Okay, but we got to get our act together and do things much faster than they've had the opportunity to do. Of course, we have the opportunity of learning from everything they've done in the past. So we have a statutory body. We are a mechanism of the government of India. We are not a policy shop. The line departments, line ministries, they do policy. I don't do policy. So when people come to me with procurement policy or regulatory policy, I just say that, look, those are handled by others, but we will help here and there. But that's not my day job. My day job is to use, to be a good catalyst, which is, I want to, and my best form of catalyzing is to give money. Okay, and use money and say that, okay, here's what I want. Okay, here's money. Okay, then hopefully that will create a catalyst, and of course we'll do a few other things to coordinate and drive things. But that's the essence of it. But the more important aspect is that we are doing funding in different ways. One is a patient capital mode, which is the 1 lakh crore RDI fund, which is only for private sector. Okay, it is not for academic sector, but when you create a startup and so on, that startup can bid for that money and so on. So, that is called patient capital. It's for deep tech, for long horizon research and scientific and innovation driven projects of sorts. That can be there is various forms of debt, equity, or convertible instruments and so on. These are not grant capital. So ANRF is quite unique in having an entity which has both RDI as well as a core grants making organization. And the simple thinking is that at the early stages of technology readiness or maturity, you use grants to de-risk technology, and then as you go towards mid TRLs or technology readiness levels, and then you use a capital form to drive this, right? And there is no other organization in the world. We are the first in the world to have a single organization that does both grant capital as well as things. So you should be proud of your country that we are doing something world's first. And we are also executing very fast. The Honorable Prime Minister announced RDI on November 3rd, and it's barely 3 months since that was announced, and we have already both given out the money. So I have given 2,000 crores to TDB, 2,000 crores to BIRAC, and we have already closed a deadline for the second level fund managers I'll talk about shortly, and we'll be deciding on them by April, and money will be given out to them as well. So this will create a huge asset class to fund startups, to fund deep tech research projects and so on. And we are just getting started. We'll be doing this every year for the next few years, and then it'll be self-financing going forward as well. So that's the basic story. And of course, the other aspect of the story is how we do our grants. Our grants we do broad-based grants like National Science Foundation does, which supports the bread and butter of our institutions. But at the same time, we want these projects to be more impact-oriented. And even if you're doing basic science, think of being like Einstein and do bigger, bolder basic science. If you're doing, applied science, interdisciplinary sciences, or collaborative things, do again bolder, look for impact, and things like that, things backwards from impact, right? So that's the general guidance, and we value both scientific impact as well as applied impact and so on. So without deep science, there's no deep tech. So there is a general confusion that we are de-emphasizing deep science investment. Actually, to the contrary, I have doubled or quadrupled in some cases the amount of funding for basic research and fundamental research. So we are doing a lot more, and also we are also doing more focused initiatives, which think of them as after something things have reached some level of maturity, like what we call TRL 1 or 2, and then you want to accelerate that to faster towards TRL 4, 5, 6 or mid TRLs, and then so that it can pivot over and have impact through other means. So we have mission mode programs that we're doing which give focus, and when you have focus, you can do more things. So that's the general idea. And the other part, which is from our founding itself, ANRF is open to lots of partnerships, and we are keenly partnering with multiple folks in the industry. So I have my friends from NVIDIA here as well. So we are talking to them. We are working with other partners. So I will not steal their thunder from the summit, which is coming up, where you'll see some more exciting announcements coming up. But the basic idea is that if you like Hindi movies, this one called Hum Saath Saath Hai, right? So we have this Hum Saath Saath Hai philosophy policy, not just across our ministries, but also across entities, as well as we would like to have this hum saath saath hai for your collaboration as well. So AI for science and engineering it's a hum saath saath hai between our AI friends and our friends in science and engineering. Okay. So another way to look at it is the horizontal programs are more like foundational things, and vertical programs are more focused. Okay, so you can think of the horizontal more like NSF, the verticals more like DARPA and focused. We'll be experimenting with DARPA challenges and other formats, which we were just talking about shortly. And on the top, we have a few things that we do very carefully to be more of an integrator across the nation. Think of this as a roof. We do a few dashboards. We are going to do some few open collaborative programs. We may do some matchmaking services, other sorts of things, but and open data platforms where there is fragmentation. So to be a true catalyst or to reduce frictions across ministries and so on, right? So again, the goal is to do a few things well, do it in a structured way. So I wouldn't go outside this sort of a template when we do things. So these pillars that you see are focus in terms of uplifting our research ecosystem. Even there, we are doing a mission mode program towards improving our emerging research institutions in a program called PAIR. We have a program for multiple programs on mission mode research, and then industry academic collaboration also. We have announced programs. I'm going to do also a massive societal program shortly as well coming up. Okay, so in our vertical missions, so AI for science and engineering, which we'll talk about shortly, is one of the various things. Okay, if you see these balloon diagrams, there are all these other colored balloons are other mission mode programs we're doing. Some of them are launched, some of them are under consideration. So we've launched on electric mobility, we've launched on medical technologies, medtech, we've launched a 2D materials one, we've launched a critical raw minerals materials one, AI for science and engineering. We're going to be launching one on drones shortly. Just a couple of days back, we also announced our IP policies as well, which is again very straightforward and simple, where IP is owned by our grantee institutions or whomever we give the money to, who do the work actually, and then they can do their own policies. So in the past, government used to dabble with having all this joint IP and all this crap. Okay, so we've gotten rid of all of that, have a very clean IP policy. And also for the AI for science and engineering, we pioneered an open IP for the entire program. So and in fact, we have announced an open IP policy as well, which we will use in selected programs. In fact, in our drones program, we are going to be using an open IP policy for designs, patents, and so on and so forth. In fact, even for hardware designs for foreground IP, we are going to open IP. Basically, that will allow faster translation from academia to startups and so on, and integrating IP and so on. So India is going to be a leader in open ecosystems, just like what we've done with UPI and so on, right? So that's part of the broader thinking. We also, there are many societal problems. Honorable Prime Minister has asked us to say, go after solving India's problems, but then develop technologies as part of that, and then you'll be world beaters. Based on the unit economics and context that you can solve for. So rather than doing lots of individual chota mota problem, we're going to be launching a massive India Challenges kind of program. We are calling it a leapfrog demonstrators for societal innovation. I've already have it approved. Now we're going to launch it in a month or two. Okay. The other thing we're doing is a translational research initiative or innovation. So these are more of centers that we have announced for bridging the gap between the early or the mid TRL stage. So this will set up centers for pilot scale manufacturing and various sorts of other, depending upon the domain, various sorts of translational facilities that are going to be there. And, how can you think of the pre-startup phase, pre-incubation phase, and those sorts of things. And do things like venture builder, all these kinds of things, right? So we'll be doing many ideas in this space as well. So think of it as like, how do I move from Einstein's world to Elon Musk's world of, getting things across the fence? You can't just toss it. You have to have a collaborative and long-lived enterprises for this. And, we are also going to do catalytic programs to enable new institutions to form, where we may not be the majority funder. We could be a minority funder, but also catalyze. If you look at the US, you have institutions like Allen AI and other institutions. So we'd like to have many more philanthropic driven institutions that also emerge. So we'll be doing other things of that nature. So it's when we see, so that you can have fundamental research institutions like Max Planck, this thing and so on, Allen AI and others, as well as more translation institutions. And we'll be setting up all these centers as well. So Saral is an example of a piece of work that we're doing to democratize research using AI and social media. So again, this is inspired by Google's Notebook LM project, but we wanted to focus on how we can sort of map it to our research workflows. How do we get publications? Researchers are great at writing papers, but they're terrible in social media. So we wanted to give a single easy button to sort this out. So the idea is that we are working with IIT Hyderabad on this. Professor PK and his team, and a whole bunch of volunteers. Is an open source project. If you guys are interested in contributing, please help us. We are very happy to work together, and so we've been actively encouraging adoption so that people from the top institutions or whatever the best papers, you should be creating Saral based videos, and we are partnering with Sarvam and so on, adopting their latest models. They've just put out some new models this week, so we'll be adopting that very quickly to and doing things like that. So every month we put out new releases, and new features. For example, we have papers to posters now. So basically, you write a paper, one click you'll get a poster. If you write a paper, one click you'll get a YouTube video. One click you get an Instagram reel, right? So, but it's all nice in theory, but this is in practice. It's already built, and we are constantly. And by the way, you as a side effect, you also get a PPT presentation. You're bored about. You don't want to create a PPT presentation. No problem. Just press a button, you'll get your PPT as well, right? And we are doing this for patents and so on. This will also help create technology briefs. One of the interesting things is that researchers don't know what their impact of their own paper is. No problem. AI is there to help. So, so you write a paper, you press a button, AI will tell you what is the impact of your paper. Okay. All right. So that's the idea kind of thing. So then this can hopefully, help bridge for the translation and other things as well. So we'll be putting up other things for helping more open data sharing and all of those things over time. Okay, coming to AI for science and engineering, I'll be very brief because you guys are the experts in the space. So this is more about a story of how we designed a program. So we talked to a whole bunch of people in science and engineering and AI. We found that they're not talking to each other. So this is another example where I said, here's my money, but it's only available if you collaborate. Okay, so if I get a proposal which says, oh, it's just an AI in disguise, or a science, or just give me a cryo microscope or something like that, that proposal will be thrown out. Okay, so it is only to drive collaboration between the two sides, and of course we would also like each of these areas to drive creation of lots of new models, and also the entire space is getting revolutionized as well. So we have created different tracks: AI for science and also science of AI. AI for engineering broadly, with an emphasis on engineering design and advanced material development, because one of our partners, DRDO, was interested in that, but we also support other aspects of engineering, things like computational fluid dynamics, all of that. And then weather and climate modeling and its downstream applications in whether it's air pollution or in other things for power and renewables and all that. And then bio and life sciences with downstream applications in drug design or bio and other sorts of areas. So we have partnership with MIT on GPU allocation from them. We partnership with Ministry of Earth Sciences for data from IMD and other places. We have partnership with DBT on AI, bio AI hubs and other things they are interested in. And then we have partnership with DRDO because they are interested in advanced materials and accelerating materials design and so on. We are also introducing a contrast track, and I'm pleased to see IIT Delhi partnering with us to helping us getting this off the ground. So we're also partnering with other companies and doing that, and also thanks to NVIDIA for helping us in various ways in this entire process. So we're having IBM, we're having other folks, Google and so on, who are helping us in various things. So we'll be launching more of these sorts of contests. Contests could be simple research hackathon kind of thing, or a long-running thing, or a multi-phase thing. We are also thinking of doing much more industry challenges going forward, and this is just a format. So we'll be experimenting with some of these formats in the program structure, right? But the whole goal is that this whole thing is an umbrella. We will be consistent with the overall thematic unity of this. But the overall goal is to think of the entire ways in which AI is revolutioning science and engineering, and let's get India really, revved up to doing all of this stuff, right? So whether it's in the discovery side, or whether it's in the experimentation side, whether it's in the loop of science itself, the loop of engineering, or the conversion from deep science to deep engineering, there is changes happening all over the place. And there are a whole bunch of open models being thrown out, by the hyperscalers, or NVIDIA is throwing something left and right every time. time, right? So, but what matters is not what they throw out, but how can we apply it to get stuff done, right? And how to use it to apply it to solve problems, and at the same time, we become part of the contributors to this global change. So the goals for the program are, how do we accelerate? Okay, so accelerate deep science or discovery. So, but discovery is one aspect of science, okay, and discovering new science, discovering new equations, and so on. And but this can be in all aspects of science. It could be discovery using an experimental method, discovery using completely theoretical method, discovery using mathematical methods, all sorts of discovery. How do you accelerate it? What are the new ways in which you could accelerate? Similarly, how do I go beyond discovery to saying accelerating the conversion or the translation from deep science to deep tech? Okay, when you come up with a new equation, let's say for CFD or some new thing for a DFT approximation, how do I then convert that into practice so that I can then convert it into saying doing quantum simulations faster? How do I do digital twins that can actually embed computational fluid dynamics, in situ. So whether it's in a car moving or in a wind turbine that is rolling off, or how do you make highly customized vehicles where the material science is actually not just designed one time, but also if you have MEMS and others. If you look at inside an ASML system, you have all kinds of micro mirrors and other things which are orchestrated in real time, right? So what is a $300 million machine? Ultimately, it can become more into a consumer grade product going forward, where materials, MEMS and other things can be both orchestrated using direct physical modeling and so on in the future. So of course we think of how to accelerate faster design, but also how to accelerate and transform how the next generation set of fighter aircraft or the next generation engine designs and so on, right? Since technology and sovereignty, all of this are getting very important, we need our own capability to be able to design aircraft engines or jet engines or other sorts of things, right? And this capacity, capability is scarce. So why don't we have open models where we can get all of these digital twins and so on embedded? Similarly, we believe in combinatorial innovation. The rate of innovation is much faster when we have Lego blocks and with well-defined interfaces. And in one of my past in Microsoft about a year back, we had developed an AI agent builder where essentially the AI agents can be built by just reading model cards of from Hugging Face and so on, and based on certain domains. So similarly, once we have a collection of models, then you can have AI agents that can be composed dynamically as well. So therefore, and also this being used to drive innovation and so on. So again, there are various varieties of techniques, and you guys probably know much about this than me. Specific techniques that have been used in core AI for things like ChatGPT are now being used to directly model numerical simulations, directly model CFDs, directly model partial differential equations and stuff like that. So physics informed or physics based neural model and operator models of various kinds, and also using generative and reinforcement learning for specific ideas like experiment design and in different parts of that loop, or using diffusion and other modeling for more discrete simulations like molecular simulations and biological and other simulations. And then we believe that an entire HPC area is going to get revolutionized. CAD is going to get revolutionized. CAM, computer aided manufacturing, is going to revolutionize. Okay, we got to get on with it. And since SAS is going to get completely transformed, engineering SAS is going to get transformed with AI. So there's an opportunity to then embed all of this in, and new companies, etc., can come out from all of this, right? So again, I want to go and belabor this, but if you look at a loop of science, or this is more like a flow chart of science happening, of problem definition, acquiring data, representation learning, iterative refinement, all of these things, different techniques are starting to get useful in different parts of these value chains. And of course there is how exactly these techniques come, new fundamental ways of modeling. If something works, how do you make it faster? How do you reduce the approximation errors? Then how do you actually then make all these things work together, and so on and so forth, right? So the amazing thing is that these forward passes are so much more faster than traditional HPC, and but there's some approximation error. So the interesting thing is, how do I get these multiple orders of magnitude of gain? And it also means that the story of Industry 4.0 was how do I not just design a product and put it out, and a static product, but then the product itself will be a living product. In the real world now, you can have an AI model sitting on the product, and the product itself becomes much more dynamic and so on, right? A good example of that is a Tesla car that does autonomous driving, and through software updates and AI updates, you could do a lot of things. But you can imagine the same thing in your Ather scooter and so on going forward, right? So then there are lots of problems. India has no shortage of problems, right? So suppose I want to deal with traffic. How do I create an Ather scooter or whatever Ola scooter that can be self-balancing? It can drive through Indian traffic, right? And sort itself out through potholes and the Indian traffic, right? That's an example of a challenge problem. How do you make it work, okay? And how do you embed whatever these models and so on? So we are going to be doing many of this kind of challenges going forward that will complement the core enterprise of design, okay? So that's all I have. We are partnering with all kinds of ministries and so on to help unlock various things, okay? But with that, let me pause here and say quickly that for us, both the data sets as well as the models are important, as well as we do support a bunch of validation work and all of this because the fundamental goal is how do you accelerate the scientific loop. We have Ajay here from IIC in the Art Park and so on. So there is other things about how do we accelerate experiments, robotic experiments and so on. How do we integrate high throughput automated experimentation as well. So we think that there's an opportunity for India to put together a stack just like the India stack, and this will be a coherent stack of models, data sets and so on, so that we start leading the world and we reduce our fragmentation. And wherever I go, I see lots of interesting equipment, like you have your central facility here. Whenever I ask them, where is your data? They'll say it's in a hard drive. Okay, so the sort of balkanization of data has to end, and we need to bring these data sets together and and make it findable, reusable, and all of those things, right? Okay, so that's all I have. Happy to take questions or discussion.
Thank you very much for this this talk, and really inspiring to see how so many activities are being undertaken by ANRF, and maybe also going outside the box and trying out different strategies for success. But before I get more into ANRF, I just wanted to maybe ask you, there are lots of young students here, and you have worked for many years in industry. So maybe I thought I'll start with a simple personal question. It is a very different strategy, a very different trajectory that you went from academia to industry, and then you are now back in the country leading a government initiative. So maybe some thoughts on what sort of prompted you to take this position, and how do you think your experience sort of creates a distinguishing approach to how you would attack it or work on it?
Well, first, thank you, Mosam. Thanks. It's wonderful to be here. See, it's nothing major fancy. You get bored with your job after some time, and you are looking for greater impact. And it's no longer about the money, right? It's going to government is not about the money. You get a 10x pay cut. But it's about the impact you can potentially have, right? In Microsoft, I was responsible for a couple of $1 billion of revenue and things like that, right? But here, I can have an impact on a couple of $1 trillion if you want to look at a monetary impact. But more impactful is that we have the opportunity to completely transform how India's research ecosystem is and set the stage for India's rise, right? So that's you can't have a bigger sales pitch than that, right? So I think when after the freedom fighter war, and whenever if you look at the histories of institutions like IIT Delhi or IIM Ahmedabad or various other institutions, so the nation builders of those times went around and sought people to say, come and build the nation. Now here we are also in another phase of nation building for different kind, and there's nothing more inspiring than building a nation.
Makes sense. Well, I'm so glad that you took that on, and I really hope that impact that we are, you are promising to the country sort of goes through. Whenever we write a paper, we also have a related work section. And so when we talk about ANRF, we should also have a related work section. So as a faculty member and as a researcher in the country for many years, I have seen that there are many organizations that have been incentivizing research. It started with DST, and then for computer science there is MIT. For there are other ministries. There are various organizations. How do you place ANRF? Is it that ANRF is now the de facto standard body which will oversee all research? Is it that all sources of money in the past stay and ANRF is another source of money? Whatever it is, how does ANRF distinguish itself from all these other government organizations? Because that will help us in understanding when do we reach out to you, when do we not reach out to you, when is it right to work with ANRF and when is it not?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. See, I think as I mentioned in my talk, there's a lot of fragmented research going on, and also one is the fragmentation and so on. So whenever there's something that requires cooperation between line ministries and so on, or in an area, it was very hard to find resources, right? And also doing larger things at critical scale, there was no consistent way of doing that, right? So ANRF as an institution was founded for that. So just to be very clear, we are anointed as an apex institution across all of stakeholders, across government or across industry, academia, philanthropy, fundraising, and so on. But it does not mean that we do everything, right? So the line ministries continue to do their own investments. MIT will continue to do their own investments. So DST will continue to do the investment. They may choose to do slightly different investments, but ANRF is net new. Okay, just want to be clear that. So this is, people talk about, okay, we are 0.7% of GDP and we've got to invest more and so on, which is correct. But so this is the net new portion of the government investing, but we are also trying to catalyze the private sector to invest more, and I'm also mopping up uninvested R&D dollars or R&D rupees sitting around in other parts of government, and aggregating that through ANRF programs in collaboration with them and so on and so forth, right? So for example, we are doing a critical minerals mission mode program in partnership with the Ministry of Mines. Okay, so then this becomes a more critical mass program and so on and so forth. So that's a short summary. So the line ministries will continue. They may have slightly different focus. For example, the quantum mission will continue under Department of Science and Technology. Green hydrogen will continue under Ministry of New and Renewables. Right, AI mission will continue under MIT, or semiconductor mission will continue under MIT. But then we partner with India AI mission for this, for example. And any other thing we do for research, we will partner with them. Okay. And they will choose to support, some of the other foundation models. Sashi is here, and they are supporting them and so on. So they may do individual larger things. They may have sovereign interests. So they are a policy bulwark, and my goal is only research, but it doesn't mean the other research stops.
Okay, that's great. Net plus is always welcome.
Yes.
As somebody who understands the US system, and I was briefly mentioning this to you as well, I was wondering if ANRF sees itself more as an NSF or a DARPA. And the difference for me is that NSF is more fundamental and often curiosity-driven research. I would also say that sometimes it is slightly higher risk in terms of research because the probability of success is a little bit lower. DARPA, on the other hand, I think of it as teams working together to solve some, relatively tangible goal where some of the fundamental research has already happened, and it's more often outcome oriented. It is more often a little bit lesser risk than NSF. And it may not be done by one person easily. It requires a larger teams to work together. And in fact, it sounds like ANRF is also aspiring to not just be NSF and DARPA, but also to be, the next step towards industry, and so maybe going one step beyond DARPA. So is it not too much that ANRF is taking on, or do you think that it will over time be more DARPA-like? Or, how do you, look at ANRF in this sort of perspective?
So many questions in one. But we have a challenge in India. We don't have the luxury of 75 years to do an NSF. If you look at the history, right? So NSF was set up in just after World War II by Vannevar Bush and so on. And then when there was a Sputnik movement, they said, okay, this is not enough. We need to set up DARPA and so on, right? So so here we have a single statutory body that is having my horizontal agenda is more like NSF. vertical agenda is more like DARPA, and my capital agenda is neither DARPA nor NSF does this. Okay, so but it's because I have a box with which I can do these things. And a fair question is that, yeah, won't you have strategic confusion? That's a risk we need to navigate. So the way I approach it is, when we are doing NSF-like activities, I don't judge it with DARPA-style approach. When I'm doing DARPA-style focus, I don't judge it with NSF-style approach, right? So when I'm evaluating fundamental research, I don't, give it to somebody with the translational research to evaluate, and vice versa. When I'm trying to do translational, we don't evaluate it in fundamental research. So the important thing is to avoid schizophrenia and not be unsure of what exactly you're doing, and maybe have different specializations for different parts of the organization. And then at the same time, we are trying to be a nimble and agile organization, right? So anyway, that's where we are right now. So we are trying to bootstrap and get a few of these things going, because the country honestly needs a little bit of both. But that's what I was trying to mention in my talk, that I have actually doubled, or to some extent in some programs quadrupled, my allocation for basic and fundamental research. So the observation that we are reducing emphasis on basic research is not consistent with reality, right? So that's number one. Second is we are at the same time forking off new programs every month. I'm also putting programs like dosas in Rameshwaram Cafe nowadays. Every month, here's a 500 crore program, here's a 1,000 crore program. It should be a good news, right? So, but at the same time, the community also needs to figure out how to operate in this. So most of the communities looking at small programs and so on. So now how do they respond to collaborating better? So we will be running these bigger programs. It's not like a once and done. We will run multiple cycles of them. For example, AI for Science and Engineering, we are going through the first cycle of reviews and things of that nature, but we may launch another cycle in a few months as well. So so that we'll be doing. I mean, I have enough money to spend. Yeah. So again, that's a risk accepted, but the other part of it is in NSF and DARPA, we have the community comes in, and there is a rotating human capital that comes in and out. So that we don't have a culture over here. You guys are here in IIT Delhi, but I have put out calls for experts. Somebody can take sabbaticals and spend 2 years with me, but no applicants from here. I'm able to hire from Washington. Saying, so thanks to our dear friend Trump, he is letting go of people in NSF. I hired a program director in NSF to come and work for me, but I can't hire somebody from IIT Delhi. Sorry for the missing punch. Okay, but hopefully somebody might get inspired that just because I'm able to hire, maybe I have something interesting for you.
Yeah, there are maybe even political reasons for why that is happening, but whatever it is, it's good for the country.
Nice excuse. Yeah.
Okay. I should say, since you were saying something, it suddenly spurred a line of thought. There was a discussion with a senior professor from the US once, and he said that 30, 40 years ago, even NSF was not in the shape that it is today. NSF was broken in many more ways than one, and we used to dread the government and working with the government and getting money from them and so on. But then the culture started changing, because some of us means the professors at that time, went to NSF and tried to change that system slowly. And over a decade or so, that system sort of evolved and reached a place where now we sort of see that the organization is relatively smoother and incentivizes. I think maybe that is this moment for our country, that there is somebody like you, and once some streamlining, some smoothing happens, then the next person gets more incentivized to join and so on and so forth. So I really wish you luck in that regard, and I hope that happens for the country, for the long-term good. I had a couple of thoughts, and now I've sort of lost my thoughts. Nevertheless, let's move on. So we are all here because we have the motivation to make India the science powerhouse. And it is well established that we are slightly behind internationally. India has traditionally, you also said, spent 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP on R&D. China spends 2.4%, US spends 3.5%. Are we changing that number as part of ANRF 1? And do we need more than just money to bring about this change?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Okay, so let me give you a different analogy. Okay, so you have your bank account, right? All of you have bank accounts, correct? So you have something which, if you put your money in your savings bank account, you may get very low amount of interest, like 3%, right? And then you can put your money in fixed deposits. You get 6 to 7%, right? Let's say then the same thing, you buy the stock of the bank, like HDFC Bank and so on. So the HDFC Bank has a return on equity or capital of about 18%. So they tend to compound between 15 to 18%. The stock tends to compound over time, okay? So the return on equity or return on investment is a measure of productivity. So capital tends to grow on average where the return on capital is higher. Just think about yourself. You are getting a higher interest rate, you will tend to go there. Yeah, you may have some constraints, then you have to evaluate your trade-off. If you go to fixed deposit, your money is locked in for 1 year or 2 years. But if you are willing to take that trade-off, you are willing to take. Similarly, if you go for 18% interest, you have to take some more risk and so on. So the reason I gave you this analogy is that input, the amount of capital or the amount of principal that will go towards an investment vehicle depends on the productivity of that as measured by return on capital. So the reason I'm giving all this financial, mumbo jumbo is because the same thing holds for research investment. When we say 0.6, 0.7% of GDP is going, it is not because I can't invest 2%. I can put 2%, but if the return on capital is low, that will be a bad investment. That is, so we have the analysis backward. So if you want to increase the percentage of GDP invested in research, we've got to increase the productivity of the engine. We've got to take it from an ambassador engine and make it more like a Tesla engine or whatever, right? So that's the way to think about it. So, so the frame of that is for research. What does that mean? If you're an individual researcher, you've got to think of greater impact of your research. Think of, when you're doing science, think of doing better and bigger and bolder science. Take more risks on your science. If you're doing science, you can team with your neighbor in your science, right? There are faculty members who don't even talk to their neighbors. And, by teaming together, you can go. By interdisciplinary, there was mention of AI researchers winning the Nobel Prize. Now you have an opportunity to win the Nobel Prize. So why can't you partner with your scientific colleagues and, let's say, let's go win the Nobel Prize, right? So collaboration is an opportunity for impact. Collaboration can give greater productivity. And that's why I keep saying this hum saath saath hai analogy, right? The hum saath saath hai is more than a slogan. It is that the theory is that impact matters. Impact gives greater productivity. You've got to take greater risks for impact. And if you have that productivity engine, it is like the HDFC stock of 18%. So to answer your question more directly, we have to increase the productivity of our research engine in India through collaboration as a means towards greater impact, have a more of impact focus in everything we do, including fundamental research, and then that itself will drive the greater inputs. So inputs will be given, and ANRF's inputs, whether in RDI and so on, if you take the math, if you take 50,000 crores and 1 lakh crores and do a simple, think of a little bit more, which is our 1 lakh crores that we put out in ANRF for the RDI, we will get a multiplier of 2 to 3x at the second level fund manager level and another 2x thing. So we'll become 4 to 6 lakh crores. Okay, 4 lakh crores is 1% of GDP. This is an incremental 1% of GDP. Yes, it's invested over a few years. Even if you do a division by 4, it is or 4 or 5, it is 0.2% incremental GDP. Just the government is putting in, and so on. So the idea is that this will catalyze this thing. So we have to move from 0.7% of GDP to 1% of GDP and then beyond, right? So I think our goal is that we will be increasing in stages, but you can't just try to push more money into the system. The money will resist going in if the productivity and the impact is not there. So my goal as ANRF is to change the ecosystem for greater impact. And that will itself inspire more capital to come in.
So the point well taken, but in the financial analogy, there is the whole notion of critical mass as well. If sometimes in research, unless we have the critical mass, the productivity doesn't start showing up. And also there is a sense of a horizon, because in stock market, the horizon is generally short. It's a year, 2 years, 3 years. But in research, the horizon is sometimes 10 years and 20 years. So the exact financial analogy is maybe a little bit misleading from that point of view. But that notwithstanding, why is our productivity, in your opinion, not as good as everywhere else in the world for the number of people that we have? My personal theory is that we actually do not have enough people for a country our size to do research of that level, and therefore the overall productivity is a little bit lower, but per person productivity is not that bad if you look at least the premier institutions. But maybe you will disagree. Maybe there are other reasons you think that our productivity should have been higher and isn't. So, can you maybe think a little bit more about that?
Look, I think I don't want to get into a long debate about all the reasons. Okay, to be honest, I don't have all that great insight, greater than any one of us at this point. So we have some working hypothesis that we are going to increase the amount of money coming in. We are going to increase the inputs. That is one dimension. The other is we are going to drive incentives for thinking bolder, being more collaborative, all of these. And to your question about horizons, yes, we recognize research has more horizons. That's why we fund more fundamental research. And ANRF is a long-lived institution, so there are institutional transformation happening. But then I think once there are these. As a community, we start believing in ourselves and gelling together. I think it's a process, right? So we'll have to try a few iterations of it, and we'll get going. So the good news is that both the inputs will increase, whether the inputs in terms of financial capital being invested, and the multiplier effects associated with that, or creation of new ecosystems and asset class, because we are trying to inspire more capital to come to India to fund startups and so on. That in turn will drive more academic industry collaboration. So we are trying to drive a few effects to get going, and not just say I'm taking government capital and putting it out and funding research projects, right? So we are trying to attack the problem from multiple dimensions. And I don't fully understand the system, all the mechanics of it, right? But we hope that it'll suddenly magically get itself.
Okay. Well, we can talk more. You did talk about value of death in your slides. I'm changing subject here, and we talked about TRL 1 to 3, which is generally foundational, and maybe one side of ANRF is going to fund that. And we talked about the more ready to go to the field kind of technologies, which are in the higher levels of TRLs. But it's also understood that often the handshake doesn't happen very well. The lab technologies require a fair amount of additional effort and investment, which do not require the same type of researchers, but do not also require just engineers, which require a maybe layer in the middle, which are people who understand both sides. And if I have to give my analogy again from the US experience, people like SRI and BBN, I think, are in those categories, because these are the people who talk to the researchers, can understand research, can sometimes do some research, but that is not their strength. And they also understand what it means for something to go into the product, or at least show a demonstration that is compelling for the industry to take it up. And they have a strong body of engineers come scientists. I sometimes feel that we lack that ecosystem, we lack that set of people. We haven't made them because we haven't had grants in that style, and so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts? What are the conscious efforts that ANRF may be taking to reduce this valley of death?
Excellent question. So if you look at most of our vertical programs, whether it's a Maha mission mode programs or the translation programs and other programs, I told you we're going to do a massive societal innovation leapfrog demonstrator. We are funding more money, right? So our grants for the AIF for science and engineering is we are funding up to 30 crore, and in outstanding instances we can consider up to 50 crore, right? So, but we don't want to throw our money just like saying I can potentially fund 200 crores, but I don't want to do. So we are doing larger quantums of support. That's number one. And also, you mentioned various institutions. We are sitting in the research and innovation building here, right? So this is an example of a translational facility. There is hopefully, there are different parts here which are translational. There are translational centers that are popping up and so on. Now, translational institutions, you mentioned SRI. There is Allen Institute is more of a fundamental institute, right? Or Fraunhofer in Germany and so on is more translation. So there can be institutions which are run differently by non-government. Like Allen Institute was founded by Paul Allen. Mm-hmm. Like Max Planck has an endowment and so on, right? Or the Turing Institute has endowment. So we need the emergence of more such institutions in India, which may focus on different parts of the technology spectrum. There could be more fundamental research institutions, more this thing. Then this gives more options for our students and so on to go and work in these places while remaining in research, right? Yeah, they can become faculty, but they can also go and work in an Allen Institute and then have dual appointments and so on and so forth. So yeah, there is a need for more of that. In fact, I briefly mentioned that we are interested in catalyzing those institutions. See, the end of the day, if government makes another institution, it will become yet another lab like a CSR lab, or do you know that government has 300 labs already? You don't want me to put on yet another lab. My goal is to catalyze a new type of lab that is run by somebody, not me, who will run it differently, right? So our goal is now, in fact, I have gotten approval from our executive council to do catalytic investments to enable the emergence where I only put 10%. The 90% comes from somebody else and they behave differently. So we have, and that's more for institutional things, and this will then inspire maybe more diaspora giving back to India. IIT Delhi is blessed with so many unicorn founders and all of that. You can do new types of institutions that are possible around here, right? So I think those sorts of possibilities we would like to catalyze. So that's the other dimension. And you mentioned funding, right? So in all my mission mode programs, let's say the AI for Science and Engineering program, we explicitly say that Section 8 companies can apply.
I see.
Okay, but when we are doing A3 center, we may be a bit more careful and saying these new translation centers may have to be in some specific kinds of like academia or labs and so on and so forth, right? But other than the minor thing, many of my programs, anybody who's a researcher there can also apply. So, funding will increase and hopefully they will behave differently. But having been a CTO in Microsoft, even though I was not part of Microsoft Research, I was in the same building. We had breakfast with the guys. We could talk easily with MSR researchers, and then we've written papers with them and so on and so forth. The ability for that diffusion of ideas across translation spectrum, and I happen to have been an academic myself, so I've gone to the other side. Similarly, somebody who's an academic today, going to either a startup or others and being in a research environment in a research park. See, all of this, it's not like one thing that will make a difference. They're both the physical environment, the ability to have connections and more frequent conversations, the place, and the morale, the sort of ethos of how things done, and yes, funding, right? Yeah. All of this, all of the above. Yeah, we have a ways to go.
Cool. Well, thanks. We are running short of time, so maybe I should ask a couple of questions on the AI for Science side because we are here. So, are there any specific strategic priorities of the country where you think that most value can be gained and we can realize the mission of Viksit and Atmanirbhar Bharat through that? So are there specific, I know that you have lots of programs. It feels almost like you're covering a large number of verticals based on all the various areas in which AI can really contribute. But is there a specific priority for you? In other words, maybe is there a single moonshot project that you would, you really hope that in 5 years we have a real chance to be a world leader?
See, I'm trying to resist the temptation of me becoming like an all-knowing seer and saying, sure, I know exactly what the answer is. So the area of AI for science and engineering is I'm putting a stake in the ground saying that AI and science and engineering have to come together. Within that, I'm giving flexibility and show me something and helping bottom up to emerge, right? So I don't know. Is the simple answer. So you guys need to tell me, what you guys can do, change the way experiments get done, or, fancy material science get done, or, how things. So we are giving broad guidelines, right? Accelerate the development of deep science. Help me move deep science to deep tech faster so that, we can do. But what example, what thing, I have the humility to say I don't know, but, maybe you guys can tell me.
Okay,
but that's it. As we briefly spoke, we are open to doing more challenge mode. If somebody, smarter than myself can figure out what a challenge can be, I gave you a simple example of an integrated challenge, right? In transportation, we have a problem of the last mile for connectivity with metros and so on.
Yes.
Can I make a self-balancing, self-driving scooter that can take you from your home to your metro stop? Simple thing, right? A personalized transportation, which is self-driving, whatever. It should navigate the potholes of India, it should navigate the traffic of India, make it work. That has all the embedded AI, all the autonomy, all the other stuff involved, right? So that's an example of something that brings science, it brings engineering, it brings integration. Yeah, we can bring the Aethers, Olas to the table, make it happen, etc. and maybe our friends in the from NVIDIA and others may be willing to partner with us. So we will be happy to underwrite a challenge program like this. Now make it happen in India. So then, just like Indian Idol and so on, we can do stuff and make it exciting.
Cool. We will have a research idol soon. So you should all start thinking about what would you present there. Maybe one last question. So all my students, but in my class, my AI class, but people at large are getting concerned about the growing impact, the disruptive impact that AI is causing, right? It is not very clear that 10, 15 years down the line whether we will have jobs or whether there will even be a concept of jobs, it is said. Vinod Khosla has gone as far as saying that in 5 years, 80% of the jobs are going to be taken by AI. And even Google is coming up with a researcher co-pilot. They are not saying that we will remove researchers, but they are saying that AI will do a lot of the hand-holding that researcher needs to do for their cycles. And all these AI for science initiatives are also in the spirit of how can really AI speed it up. And whenever we speed it up, it's really great for humanity, but in the consequence, we are also taking away some things that were being done by humans with very little clarity on what it is new things that the humans are going to be doing. You lead the apex body, you are thinking at the forefront of this for the country. Do you have any thoughts on what the future might look like 10, 15 years down the line, whether we will be employed at all or we will be just sitting back, relaxing, let the AI do its thing and we'll say, good.
Well, that's an interesting future, isn't it? So look, I think I will give you this thing, right? I will say they're right and they're wrong at the same time, okay, in the following sense, right? So traditionally, technologies have done automation, right? So you have a calculator or you have like the steam engine and so on, which make something faster, more efficient and so on in general. And then people determine they can then master that engine or become, manage that and then use that capital. Humans move from doing things to then managing things and then composing and orchestrating things. Now we are the first time at a threshold of something that also writes code by itself, it also tests itself, it does everything, and then hey, what happened to our software engineering job, right? So on one hand, the basic question is technology is always moved in the direction of more efficiency, automation, and efficiency of that sort, right? So first time we are faced with a new kind of technology that is also having cognitive capabilities and so on and so forth. But the other part of it is that the way technology has moved is that people find new markets to apply their talents, or when labor gets released from one task, you go and do other tasks. So for example, US at one point had 98% in agriculture. Now they have 2% in agriculture. 98% are quite well employed and they're doing other things, right? So the services and manufacturing, other industry, manufacturing got hollowed out, services growing. So this is a continual dynamic system. But that said, I would also ask you to think about the following thing. India has so many problems. Okay, we say we have if you're looking in an urban space, you have a traffic problem, you have a pollution problem. Okay, then AI go solve the pollution problem. AI go solve the traffic problem, right? AI go solve, some other problem, some groundwater problem. Can it solve it? So I would say that we have the ability to take on more complex problems than AI can sing. Then if you take that higher plane, then you are observing that AI is solving one task. Maybe it is able to write and code faster. How then can you apply that code and go and solve a societal problem? That is, can AI do my job? I mean, you said, okay, I have to go and transform all this research and this thing, right? So, magically you can go around, do the job and so on. Can AI inspire you and so on, right? So, I gave a challenge of, I was in IIM Ahmedabad and they asked me to, I do a little bit of Carnatic music and so on, right? So I sang a song and said, of course, this may be a task that AI might pick up and solve after 5 years. But, can AI sing Carnatic music like me, right? And with all the intonations, all those things. I know you may be specific discrete tasks that you can take on. You should always think of task automation and task displacement. That is definitely going to ask. But humans have the ability to think bigger. We have societal problems. Once all societal problems in the area is gone, then I'll say go solve the climate change problem. Okay, can I press the AI button and say go solve the climate change problem? Okay, so I think the right frame to think about is humans have higher order judgment, and we can apply a cognitive in more and more things. So till I think we will have more things, and of course, yeah, we will of course have hopefully more time for leisure and so on. But of course, some of the aspects of society will change, and people have to hold more capital in stocks like Nvidia or other things, so that their future is secured and other things like that. So, there are things that one has to look at. Displacement and rapid displacement of tasks is very important. But see, one of the problems and whenever technology changes is how fast it displaces tasks and how fast society can adapt, and what can government do. Government, you can't come to government for, you have a problem, government has a solution at that. So the, fundamentally as a whole of society, we have to figure out how to solve this. But the broader thing is that you have to find new higher order problems that society needs to get solved. And humans focus on solving that, and then you use a combination of humans and AI agents to go and do that. Therefore, your training in whether it's mechanical, chemical, or other engineering becomes far more important in the world of AI.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. The key is to be nimble, agile, have enough transferable skills, and then take on the next challenge that needs to be solved, and use AI as a tool. That sounds like a perfect recipe, at least in the short term to me. Nobody knows the long term in my mind, so we'll see. Do we have time for a couple of audience questions, or should we, maybe two burning questions if somebody has, because you will not get an opportunity to ask somebody like him that easily. So maybe a question here.
Yeah, you can speak up, L. Yeah.
So I have a very basic question.
Mike, next to you.
Yeah, so I have a very basic question. I myself am a AI researcher. So in very basic problems like, let's say, medical imaging, or let's say environment related imaging, one problem which we face is availability of data, right? So, and data comes from collaboration, like you go to government organizations and get data, right? So how are you as an organization planning to actually do or take concrete steps to increase that collaboration and get that data for us, right? Because for AI, data is the fuel, right? So without data, we can't actually do anything. So yeah, that is my...
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. So we are in conversations with the health fraternity. The health ministry themselves are doing a bunch of things in data. There are lots of data silos within our own government organizations. So CSIR has its own data. There is IBDC inside DBT. There is and ICMR has its own data. So we are looking at open data exchange across some of these things. So that is one of the areas we are looking into. In fact, there's many conversations going on in that space. So that is one of the non-research things we plan to do to help connect the dots and make more data available. So we are picking up maybe health and agriculture, two areas we are thinking about doing these open data exchanges across various parts of government, and then and the broader ecosystem, so centers and states, and the private organizations, so hospitals and the like. AIMS is opening up its data and so on. So it'll take a little bit of time, but that's something we are working on. Similarly, I mentioned briefly that as part of the AI for sensor engineering, in the weather area, so IMD has data and other things, but it's very hard to access, right? So the accessibility of that and so on, right, to really truly make it a fair data sets and so on. So unlocking that and making it more easier. So I had to jump through a bunch of bureaucratic hassles to get that happening. So in a way, working on some of that, yeah. But even within the academic enterprise, as I was saying, right, there's a lot of balkanization of data. So, things like microscopy data, fall of kind, characterization data. I mean, there is an opportunity for figuring out how to rapidly, sort of consolidate all of that and aggregate that, right? So that's an area thinking about how to do, but we will put up repositories and other sorts of things and exchanges and sorts of that. Right? If you have any better ideas, please let me know. All ears.
Any other? One more question? Maybe the one in the red?
And by the way, we fund open data as part of our program. So people actually having interesting ideas can create a project just to create such open data.
Do you think India should invest more in hardware like RAM and GPU? Like we see global prices rising due to other countries investing in AI. So do you think India should invest more in this sector?
Yeah, look, I think you will be hearing a lot more from MIT around policy, around more design of GPU and so on and so forth. So you'll see us moving from the efficient and affordable AI and more systems work and applications where we have a lot more action towards more AI infrastructure, sovereign AI infrastructure, and then going down towards chip. As part of the broader semiconductor mission and design, India is blessed with lots of design engineers and so on. There are new startups popping up like Agrani Labs and others doing design of GPU chips. And of course, there's neuromorphic computing. We will be investing in all of these from the research side as well. And so on. Yes, the answer is yes, we'll be doing that. See, ultimately, we need to have optionality at different levels of the stacks. And then so that if somebody closes the doors, we have the option. But that doesn't mean that we do everything. We have to be smart about it as well.
Well, I think I've been told that we are sort of out of time, but thank you really very much for sharing all your thoughts and for an inspiring talk and an amazing discussion. I really hope that our audience, especially the younger audience, really learned a lot from this conversation and understand how there are lots of opportunities for us. There's a lot we can do for the country, and it's great that ANRF is taking the leadership here. Let's give Dr. Shivkumar Kalyanaraman a huge thanks and a round of applause.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just leave one thought, right? So for folks who are graduating or thinking, there'll be more options for research. Okay, that's the short message I say, right? Whether you want to go to academia or there'll be new institutions that'll be popping up. Of course, the startups and the asset class that we're creating, right? So there'll be more money in research, there'll be more higher paying jobs, okay? And so PhD should not be like a second class citizen, which we do and so on, right? So I just want to leave you with that final parting thought.